every idea has its own life. You will have to let that idea live its life.
If you're not embarrassed of it, then you're not moving fast enough, right?
If you are building $1 billion AI product over a weekend, what more can you not do?
The biggest blocker is your own self-doubt. That's it.
Rejection rates were much higher comparatively. Am I gonna stop? Failure is not an option. I'm not gonna quit. The only way I'll fail is if I quit, and I'm not gonna quit. Your business is not going away, but somebody else with tech will take your business.
Raution Jaiswal, thank you for being here. Raution, I looked into your story a little bit. I'm very interested to hearing about it. There's a lot of, I would say, protagonism in there, like the protagonist that grew up, and I'm curious to hear about your story. But let's start with the basics. Raution, you are CEO of a company called InsuredMine. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, the company, and just introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for inviting me to your podcast. Yes, as a CEO of InsuredMine and as a founder of InsuredMine, started in 2018. At that time, in insurance space, we were not talking a lot about innovation, disruption, because we all know typically insurance is at least 30 to 40 years behind in terms of innovation and technology. As we say that finance is 15 to 20 years behind and insurance is 30 to 40 years behind. But finance was moving up. And so we kind of felt it that insurance is coming up for the next wave of innovation. And that's when this spark and this conversation all started. I put my money on it where my mind was. And here we are, 6-7 years down the line. I think we were able to get something out of it.
I mean, you'd be the person to judge if you made it, but it sounds to me like you did. Okay, you put your money where your mouth is. You started InsuredMine. Like, why? Like, what was the motivator?
So here's the thing. I grew up in a family of business people who tend to be traders or business guys. But startup is not a word for them. For them, it's business, right? And so there was always that at the back of my mind. And then when I moved to US, I started with my whether it was US government jobs or working for Fortune 500 company. There was always that element, an itch of, hey, I want to do something of my own. And I think that itch was, and then the interesting thing is, I don't think anybody can bet on any startup to say this will be $1 billion one.
No, true.
Otherwise, everybody would just
I
rally around
mean,
that
you
company.
could say if a founder has
There are
succeeded $1
indicators.
billion
Yeah,
the second time, and then obviously, like if Elon Musk starts something tomorrow, I'm pretty sure it's going to be $1 billion company in 2 days. But I get your point. Yeah,
In 2 days. Yes.
If I were to start something, yeah, it's difficult to admit to.
Yeah.
It's a very risky business. Yeah.
Right. So my philosophy, my thesis around that is you will have to let that idea live its life. Some ideas will live a day, and then tomorrow morning you wake up and you shrug that off and say, hey, it was a freaking bad idea. Some ideas will live a week or a month. And then a month later, you'll say, you know what? I think that's not the great idea to pursue. Let's come up. So every idea has its own life. And some of them die at its own life. So InsuredMine was not the only idea. There were many ideas prior to that came to fruition, and then some of them have died off.
Ah, that's an interesting thing. Okay, so because I was going to ask you, was InsuredMine like immediately a success? But you're not telling me. I had some little things that I thought of that kind of I had to take it back to the barn and shoot it essentially. So
I did start a service company back in the day, which lived its life for a while, and then it died. And then I had a couple other ideas which kind of didn't even see the light of the day. And then this idea came, which I was not too sure about how far it will go, but it has survived.
Isn't that weird that sometimes you believe in something so much and you just can't get it to go, but then sometimes you're like, well, okay, maybe this isn't it, but let's just try. Or maybe something, I mean, that might not be the right attitude, but the thing that might not be the most sexiest thing, or the thing that you might not be the most passionate about, suddenly turns into an opportunity. And I think to myself, if I hear your story, it's a story of perseverance. It's a story about trying and failing. And you are, if I look at the guests that we've had on this show, my man, I would say every person that's come here has been talking about how failure is important to have, and how it's important to accept that to grow and to start something, you have to fail first before you can succeed, and you have to take those lessons. So,
Absolutely. And so not only failure, but you should be flexible and humble enough to understand that you failed. Sometimes you just don't accept that you have failed and you don't want to move on. Your ego becomes so big, or you feel so intelligent about yourself that I think I'm.
yeah, and I think you said it right. It's I think the word failure reflects on you personally. Like, I'm a failure, but that's not the case. You just failed. Accept it. Move on and take your lessons. Obviously, you can be sad for it, whatever, but take those lessons and move on. And then, so now you're into InsuredMine. Here's a question: like, oh, you you weren't an entrepreneur. You said you had this itch that you needed to scratch. You had a few things. When did you know? Because obviously you started InsuredMine, but when did you know at some point, like, hey, this is different. This is like, what are those whether it's metrics or moments that you realize that you want to share with somebody else, to know, hey, these are things to pay attention to know that something you've started is actually now blossoming into something that could be, x amount of millions worth or something else.
So the idea kind of started in 2017 when we were just discussing with people. It was not even a business, it was not even a company. It was just discussions. And that discussions led to me doing some PowerPoints, presenting it at some startup events, or talking to some investors and all of that. And everybody said, it's a freaking bad idea. I said, great. Now let me prove you otherwise. So that gave me a motivation, okay, let me pursue this further a bit. But then as I continue to pursue, I got to a place where that discussions led me to believe. And then there was this moment where what we were building was for insurance customers, like insured, and who was paying was insurance agencies. So there was this disconnect of who was paying and who was getting the value. So it was a flawed business model that we realized after talking to these agencies. And they said, I, who is paying, have a problem. That, and if somebody's paying, you say, okay, I'm going to take your money, I'm going to do what you need, right? So we've immediately shifted our focus. Again, I think there is also, I'll be humble about the fact that sometimes you rush to things without analyzing the full or totality of it.
Yeah, but
I
I
did
think that's
not.
also
Mhm.
inherently founders, right? Rushing to things. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And I did not took a moment to think about how big is that problem. So I didn't go to the whiteboard and did some, but I just went with the instinct knowing there is a problem. Luckily, that ended up being a much bigger problem than I would have anticipated. So that's where I got lucky. So I think there is always an element of founders being lucky. Every famous player, every reputed player, you would say, oh, that guy is lucky. Maradona was, or Ronaldo was at the place where the ball was at his striking zone. No, man, I don't know, how do you explain that connection of hard work and luck coming together?
I get what you're saying. I mean, I do believe that every entrepreneur has a little bit of luck. Look, I'll tell you one thing. I was ready to give up on everything and just close shop years ago. And then somebody came and was like, hey, offered me $100,000 to build something. Like, okay, we're not stopping right now. We're gonna continue. And I and you can make the case, yes, I put the effort into contacting somebody or whatever. But at the end of the day, the fact that it just happened, serendipitously on that specific moment where I was like, yeah, I'm about to throw the hat in and it comes, I call it luck. And obviously you're only in that position to receive this luck when you have done the work to get there, right?
You
That's
have
why I
got
was
all the way to that point.
yeah. You got to the point to make those situations happen. Those situations won't happen to people that don't get there, right? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity, you could say,
There you go,
essentially.
man.
So
Absolutely. So for
I
me, that was that moment where the agency started saying, okay, you know what? I have a problem, much bigger problem. And even then, we were not that smart to realize that problem that they were talking about is a much bigger problem, and that problem would lead us to building a world-class CRM. I was still thinking like a jutta pony with a very myopic view of saying, okay, this is just this piece of a problem that I was looking to solve for. And then there's another piece of problem. And so we were still looking at a very smaller pieces of problem. But when we found in next 6 to 9 months a set of those smaller problems and we put those pieces together as a part of puzzle, that's when that aha moment happened. When we realized, you know what, we were not, so there was a grand scheme of things in the making that we didn't even realize that we were a part of.
yeah. And the story that you're describing right now, creating something for the end user of your customers, but not really solving the problems of your direct customer that pays you, speaks to only one thing, right? Product market fit. Because a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs start something, and this happens when people have experience in the business, but it also happens when people don't have experience. And I would maybe say it happens more when they don't have experience. But you're always in a situation where you have to assume things, right? And it's one, you have anecdotal evidence for your own circumstances. You want to build a product. You're hoping this would solve a lot of cases. And if you're approaching it from a consumer mindset, you're going to solve the consumer questions. But if you don't dive deeper, if you don't peel the onion, you're going to have issue. And I like how you guys were, and you said the word humbled a few times. And so I'm going to throw it back at you. I appreciate the fact that you guys were humble enough to say, hey, let's take a step back. Let's appreciate who's paying us. Let's appreciate the fact that we are here to actually solve their problems as well, as much as solving their clients' problems, obviously. But if we're creating other things, so not solving the thing that their real core problem, what's our justification for existing? And I think that's a question that, like, why work with me? Why work with us? A lot of entrepreneurs don't ask themselves, and it's I think it's great that you guys did it. It's that's a trajectory of success, essentially.
Yeah. And I think there are a couple other lessons in this. One of those are, it's the validation from the customers, the paying customers, or, your tertiary customers, whatsoever. You are validating every element. And the more frequently you validate in your early days, the better chances you are of doing it right.
So I'm gonna guess that you're also a big fan of iterate fast.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, as the CEO and co-founder, I think, of LinkedIn once said, if you have not built a product that you are, or your first iteration of your product that you are embarrassed about, it's already too late. And so,
I mean that one
go ahead. I think
that
you
one
had
hit.
that moment.
Listen, we are working on some stuff behind the scenes. It's about AI visibility and things, and I'm this guy. It's like it needs to be perfect, and I think a lot of people, any listening here, will have this issue. And one thing I've realized myself is try to avoid working on your own things as much as possible and have somebody else do it, because you're going to care too much about it's going to be your child, your baby. It's difficult sometimes to say no or to say yes. Let's put it out to the world. And I love when you said, if you're not embarrassed of it, then you're not moving fast enough, right? That's because you gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta let it go, and you gotta put it out in the world. It really hit me there. I'm not gonna lie, that really hit me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that also gives you that validation. So you may feel embarrassed, but those initial validations from the clients or feedback from them gives you so much of clarity and confidence. Now you can go back to the workshop and do whatever magic you need to do. And I think that helped us in a big way.
It's like, don't dig a hole too deep that you can dig yourself out of, essentially, right? So if you build a software
Absolutely.
and it's so big, people, if they don't see the potential of where it could go because it's so already far ahead, it's going to be difficult to sell it also in your product market fit in that journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Man, I love that insight. And I think it's one of those things that you have to learn. You have to go through it and then you can share it. And I think everybody else that hears it, they'll hear it, they think it, but then they're still going to make that same mistake because we're humans.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think it's not about I think there is this gap between theory and practice. You cannot learn swimming by reading about it. You got to jump in the water, understand the buoyancy, and feel it.
Yeah, I think they say success is 99%. What's it called again?
Perspiration and
Exactly. Yeah,
1% inspiration.
I believe it's hard work, persuasion. Indeed, like you have to put the effort. And a lot of people, I think, if I look at myself when I was 20, I didn't think, I just do. Now I'm also understanding things a little better, and I see myself also being a little bit more trying to prepare myself as much, where I also should just give less fucks about everything, to be honest. And I love you reminding me about it. I really do. And I think everybody listening to this, listen to these words, put something out. And right now is the time, right? We have AI, we have everything. I mean, vibe coding is alive. It's maybe a little bit dying also. It's not the best, but you can put a product out. You don't be afraid. You can iterate.
Over the weekend. Over a weekend. This whole perplexity AI, that guy said, Srinivasan said, I built it over the weekend. If you are building $1 billion AI product over a weekend, what more can you not do?
I think the biggest thing the biggest blocker is your own self-doubt. That's it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And none of that caught you, like no self-doubt in starting your businesses or your ideas or InsuredMine or anything before that?
So I think, you mature after several startups to a point of it's not about self-doubting. It's about not making a major mistake or taking a huge risk with a huge exposure. So, again, I don't think self-doubt comes in your early days of, hey, what am I doing? Not after a few startups. So, but what was important to me was what am I doing? And because of that, I do not create a huge exposure for myself. For example, I was moonlighting to grow this, right? I didn't want it to quit too early because I didn't want it that, hey, this might be one of those ideas that might die in 7 months. Then what? Then I don't have a job and don't have a startup, right? So I had to make sure. So it was not a doubt, but clarity on the contrary. I needed that clarity, confidence, and insurance in a way that, hey, this is going to survive. Then the important question is, when do you know that this has survived? Well, the right answer is never. Until now, I don't know. But you know when you cannot avoid risk, you can manage risk, right? So you get to a place where you feel that, okay, I think I can manage from here. And that happened almost 18 months later.
I hear you. So it's the calculated risk angle where don't bite off more than you can chew, but take some risks, right? To try as much as you can. It kind of leads me into the conversation where you guys bootstrapped in InsuredMine, correct? So did you guys take any investment or is it still fully owned?
Zero.
Did you guys take any investment when it came to, was it a specific moment that you guys needed the cash? Was it to innovate or?
So I would be honest with you. There were at least two, three situations where we were this close of making a financial decision. Um, but hey, this is the nature of the business, or of the destiny of what has to happen. And we end up being where we are, and we never ended up making those choices. And I feel good about the fact that, because now when I look back, it seems like, it was, I'll give you one classic example. I'll not name anybody. At one point, we were offered at a valuation of 20 million. They said, okay, we're going to take 51% and give you $10 million. Now imagine, I have not seen $200,000 together, right? And now somebody's offering me $10 million.
Yeah, that's tempting. That's
It's
tempting.
freaking tempting. That's the biggest temptation I have had in my life. And if I had said no to that, I don't know. It needs that, you need that balls of steel to say
You need
no
to
to
believe
that.
that you can grow beyond that
Um,
without them and be bigger, get bigger.
and it's more than that. It's more than that. You also feel that by giving that 51%, you are not giving that one extra percent.
That's an important thing, yeah. Direction of the company, right? You can be ousted at some point. They could set up new leadership. It's an important thing. You're transferring ownership, essentially.
Yes, the governance, once it is out of your control, then you don't control the destiny. You don't control the direction, the culture, the nuances on which this company is built. And that itself was a red herring for me. And I said, no, we will not take that. We believe what we are doing. And we have doubled, quadrupled since then, done well. So now I feel that, okay, it was a good decision, but it was the toughest decision to make on that day when the CEO is calling you repeatedly, Roshan, the paper is in your inbox. I'm waiting for the signature. And you don't pick up the phone a couple times. And then finally you pick it up and say, you know what, I'm not signing it today.
How did that feel, man? How did that feel?
Oh my God, that was a day. As I say, it's one of the toughest day of my life.
I can't, I'm trying to figure out how it, I understand at some point you come to the conclusion of no. I've had tempted offers as well, and I had to say no. And were you
And this is the first time I'm sharing this. Usually I don't talk about this, but you got me to a place where I am talking about this.
I'm making you feel comfortable. I like it. Look, then, listen, I think these are lessons that people don't tell you. And I think it's very valuable for people to understand that money is a very tempting thing, right? A potential of a bright future ahead of you, no worries at all. Because obviously, you could have said no, and the reality could have been that the company failed, for example, right? There's those things I can imagine really, really, really going into your brain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it takes nerves of steel to balls of steel to say no. You did it. But is there a point where did you said no? I'm not going to sign. You hung up the phone. Is there a moment where you're like, shit, what did I do? Or was it just no? I knew this was.
Of course. No, I would be lying if I say I had that 100% clarity. But I know somewhere at the core of my heart
Mhm.
that that was the right thing to do. But still, you may know that the right thing, but how do you let go that, such a huge financial um, temptation, just let it walk away.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of people that will get into that position. By the way, like having yourself offered that amount of money, there's again we speak about luck, right? That situation was created by the hard work and effort that you guys did. Obviously, you were lucky to get an offer by somebody, but you're also lucky enough to say no, because people would call it luck to be offered it. I think the luck is the fact that you guys chose to say no. and you had the decision, and it turns out it was the right one, because now you are where you are right now.
Absolutely. And again, I think there is another element of this. This is not just a business decision that you end up taking and doing it what you do. It's important to acknowledge and recognize that, while you are making this decision, there are some business guys who are close to you that you discuss this
Yeah,
with. And then there is your family and your wife, and who all are in the middle of this with you all the time, right? You share all of this, and then they they got to be supporting you because you are taking such a huge decision, which will influence everybody's life.
true. People aspect is an important one as well, because if you choose a certain direction, it has an influence as well there. I want to talk about something that I I like about your story. We just talked about the fact that you bootstrapped. Um, there's this thing with bootstrapping. Um, so we talked about you guys and how you bootstrap the company, but then you grow to this multi-million-dollar company. You don't get there over one night, right? It's not. Rome isn't built in one day. It doesn't happen. But there are some things that you did, and there's one thing you said in your intro. Finance is 15 years behind. Insurance is 30, 40 years behind, right? Now you're coming in with something that's web-based, that's online, digital, and everything else. You're like, hey, you know what? 2018, I'm going to disrupt things. And everybody's telling you, well, that's not going to happen. And here you are telling them, showing them, hey, I did it. How did you grow your business? How did you grow your market? How did you penetrate this very difficult old age market? Because you're talking about people that are, very, I don't know to use the right word, but the insurance sector, just like the software is outdated, the decisions they make are very conservative in a sense of traditional. We don't risk averse. So why in hell would somebody sign up for a digital tool if they have their systems up and running? And why in hell would they work with you guys, the disruptor essentially, and making things maybe less safe in somebody's perspective? I'm not saying you are, but walk me through that. What did you guys do to achieve those successes and growth?
So let me start by giving you some perspective of our clients, and that is what was important for us to understand and respond to it. Um, so many of these agencies that we would speak with, who are somewhere in the Midlands and a small town in Kentucky, and you would not find a GPS to take you there. And that guy is gonna say, "Hey, I'm running this agency for last 95 freaking years, and I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I don't need something new, fancy to run my business because this is just fine." See, the problem with that guy is he is basing his assumptions on history, not on future of how things are changing and how. So we have to show him reality with, okay, you know what is going to happen in the next 5 years? And it's not rocket science of what is happening and what is going to happen. For example, we started talking about, hey, 5 years ago. So I'm talking 5 years back, right? When we were the early days of InsuredMine, 2018, 19, and 20. You know, just 5 to 10 years ago, AWS was not a thing. And suddenly it's a 10 to $15 billion business.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah.
Netflix never existed. Today, every home does not have a cable, it is Netflix, right? So there is a lot of tech pieces that has penetrated our lifestyle and the way we operate. So my thing was, your business is not going away that somebody else with tech will take your business, not somebody not with not tech. So it's up to you. Do you want to compete with that guy or just want to sit here and wait for your phone to ring
Or do you want to be that guy?
or be that guy? And so that's how a lot of these conversations started for us. And of course it was, so what they would do is, okay, I have a 30 agent agency. I'm going to buy 3 license or 4 license of the youngest agents because these guys are Gen Z or these guys are the one a bit more comfortable with tech. Because the other 25 of those, 30 of those guys are doing pen and paper insurance still today. Forget about forms. They are filling applications on paper
Till this day.
and then sending it. Why I say they're 40 years behind?
Hey, yeah. I mean, it's like government. The U.S. has. There was this thing that we heard, like when somebody wants to leave the government, it takes 4 months to process, and it goes manually into a mountain. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's still possible.
So
Yeah.
the luck, see, again, fortune favors the brave. When we started, that was the moment when API was coming into picture. Prior to that, most of these applications or the systems like agency management systems or other systems that these guys were using, they would have thick clients, which means the server were at the agencies, all the data storage. But right before that, last 3, 4, 5 years, everything was getting to cloud and APIs were starting to be built. We latched onto that API moment. We were the first few, and that plumbing through
You wrote that way.
API, we wrote that way. We leverage those APIs to build a solution because then you are not selling them, hey, I have one more piece of software to sell. I'm saying, hey, this is an add on to your software, which means you don't have to manage 2 things. This is going to be in sync with what you already have. And that was allowing us to sell better.
So you mentioned that you guys kind of were selling licenses to the younger kids at the agency or at the Gen Zs. How did that then translate into to getting more? Like there was evidence that they were more productive. There was like, how did you make your case for selling more inside of the same client?
So there was multiple value creation points that was important that we were highlighting to these agencies. Number one, now because these Gen Zs were using the system, all their activities, all their events were getting tracked. So their managers or the CEOs of the company would know exactly what. So they liked the fact that they have visibility into what was going on. Now
Because
that
now you get
created
metrics. Now you get KPIs. Now you can see, hey,
KPIs.
where can we optimize or how can we profitize this essentially? It's an
Yes.
interesting
Yeah.
thing if you're obviously looking for skill in any business.
Yep. So now we have more champions than just super users. And these champions were the leaders. And now leaders are forcing the rest of them, hey, learn from these guys, but you got to use it. You don't have a choice now. So that allowed us to penetrate.
Well, I want to dig a little bit deeper because you just said that allowed us to penetrate. Um, you know, I always love this sentence when people say the best business to sell to is an existing client or is existing business. Sell into it. So that's why I also asked, like, how did you guys create that? Well, now I'm curious, how did you guys? You mentioned creating net new business, right? Net new customers came from having those conversations. But how did you initiate them? Was this cold calling, email? Did you guys knock on the door? How did you guys grow this, like the contacts?
Absolutely. So as I was the first $1 million sales guy. So again, I have always enjoyed so taking you back to when I was 17. My first job was a cold caller.
Okay, really?
So yes,
Oh, that's
I
benefit.
did
That's the
not
benefit.
knew. I did not knew freaking 17, 18 years later that skill
That
is
would
gonna
help
come to use.
you. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I have enjoyed that part of my career early in the days because 2 things. One, I love to talk. So I enjoy friends or whoever, it's a lot of conversations. I'm not the guy who'll just be the Buddha and just sit quiet. Um, so a lot of interactions. And there is an element of psychology in it. So when I sell, so here is the pro tip. And this goes back to when I was 17, when I knew nothing about selling, but I think I had learned a thing or two at selling. And I was doing really good at that time. So I'll tell you this, how I used to sell, and I did really well. I would close my eyes. I would have the headset. I would close my eyes. I would sit. And when I'm on a call with the guy, I would visualize that guy, that he's sitting right next to me like you are. And I would have those interactions as if it's a live conversation with that guy. I would make myself comfortable. I will make him comfortable. I will get him to a place. It would not be a phone conversation. And once you get, because I always believe, don't do transactions with people, build relation. Transaction is a byproduct. And that has always has helped me. So that part of building relationship over a phone has helped. But again, who knew 17 years later, it's a much harder space when you are a non-English native speaker and you are selling to an industry where the accent is as thick as curd.
Yeah.
Um, so
That works
now,
against you. That can work against you. I can
of
understand it.
course.
Yeah.
So the rejection rates were much higher comparatively. But who the hell am I gonna stop? Hell no. Um, I would just pick up the phone. I know I have to call 40,000 and there's a lot of numbers to call. I would just keep going and I would find one or two, and just keep going. So, and we found some bigger accounts and smaller accounts and then built some relations out of that. We went to conferences, made some broader relationship, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of that then started kind of growing a little bit of its own. And conferences, speaking at conferences gave us a lot of good leads. And then suddenly we were saying that we were growing at a good clip. And that got us moving.
Very interesting. I love how, skills acquired at 17 suddenly became super relevant into growing what is now, I would say what you now call home, and what's a baby that you raised into a full-fledged teenager or adult essentially, and a business you can be proud of. And then, it speaks to the fact that you had a little skill, but you also weren't afraid to fail. Right? And coming back to how we kind of started, I see so many people advising and saying, don't be afraid to fail. Try it. Try your idea. And obviously, we spoke about calculated risks. At at an age of 20, you can take more risks than when you're 30, and even more than when you're 40, obviously, right? So the older you get, the more calculated. If you have a family and other things, I mean, you could even say 10 million is a do that what you was offered was a risk of taking essentially, and you made a decision there. But from everything I'm hearing is I have somebody in front of me right now that's saying, you know what, I'm going to try it. I pretty sure I'm going to fail at some, but I'm going to try hard and I'm going to learn from these things. I'm going to build something that I actually believe in and I love doing at the same time. And that's an amazing thing to reflect on. That's how I characterize you. I hope you agree, but that's what I see
Absolutely.
in front of
Yeah, absolutely. I think this whole perseverance, this commitment of, there are moments where I also believe failure is not an option. I'm not going to quit. The only way I'll fail is if I quit, and I'm not going to quit. So you push hard, you will see the light end of the day. And so things have not been easy, but I would not say it will ever be easy. So just keep, you know, that's what gets us going.
Appreciate it. Raution, it has been a wonderful conversation with you. Let's see. We started this conversation jumping back to to how you started, how everything went. And let me think if there's one last thing I'd like to ask you. I mean, we could do a little AI stuff, right? I'm curious to see, because let's do this. Raution, you know, obviously we're living in 2005, and you mentioned one specific thing when it came to your business. In 2018, when you started, you rode the wave of API. Now let's remove the P, and we have AI, right? We're now in a wave of AI. Is is AI possible in the insurance space? And I mean this in two ways, right? Operationally, I'm assuming you guys are utilizing it internally to classify and to whatever. But is there are there other things we're not aware of, and how you? Let's talk about AI for a second, and how are you guys preparing yourself to ride this wave?
Absolutely. So there's plenty of use cases, from underwriting to distribution to claims management to selling. All of that have huge opportunity in terms of leveraging AI. Um, I cannot be doing all of that, but I'll focus on my lane of, okay, in distribution, how do I apply AI, right? So that's where the CRM comes into picture. So in distribution, what we are looking at, so now let's look at AI first, from three different stages. Stage one, 2024, when we were just talking early days, ChatGPT, generative AI. What is generative AI? Generative AI, we were using it for email, text messages, notes, where we were converting those with prompts or whatever it is to convert it into, hey, give me a more formal outcome, or hey, draft me an email for customer who has not paid their premium and renewal is due, or whatever those things. So those were basic generative AI being used. Then we moved to the next level of AI usage in distribution, which is called predictive AI. So I'll give you two use cases of how predictive AI was being used. One was all the new business coming in. So a lot of agents have a lot in their pipeline that they're selling. Not all of them will sell. Usually a conversion is around 30%, but you don't know which 30 out of 100 will sell. But if I can tell you the probability of this particular customer is 90% and probability of another customer is 10%, which one you gonna choose? I'm letting you cherry pick customers that you need to spend your time on. So that predictive selling is getting way more enhanced because now you are judiciously choosing your time of how, what, and where you want to spend that. Other element is renewal. If I can predict which policies will renew, so you're going to spend your time on those. So that is, again, this is just stage two of from generative to predictive. Now we are moving on to the third stage. What we are building on is prescriptive. So in second generation AI, we said the probability of closing this is only 15%. Now with prescriptive, we can tell you if you do A, B, C, that 15% will change to 75%.
Hmm.
So
Very
this is
interesting.
how we are enhancing the capability of leveraging AI from prescriptive, from generative to other stages of being prescriptive and predictive and then prescriptive. Now, so I'll give you another very interesting workflow. For example, now we are leveraging text, AI, voice, all of that. So for example, if I need a customer's phone number or email address, but I have his phone number, I will let AI call that customer, have a good interaction, greet him, and ask for his email address, take that information and update my system. No human intervention.
Yeah,
So things like this
that's
are
what we're
getting.
going to. Yeah, yeah. That is. I'm not looking forward to getting a call from AI. By the way, at the same time, sometimes I'm not looking forward to getting a call from a human also, and I would rather have an AI that's just quick and efficient. Hey, look, I'm calling from this company. Can I get your email? That's it. Okay, I'll give it. but also it's like, how much would I trust a random AI calling me and asking me for my email? Because the moments of scamming and scammability become only bigger and bigger when we're talking about AI, essentially. And if we're allowing people to go to talk to us in this way, if we're open to these things. But I must admit, the fact that you guys are working so hard on these innovations when it comes to predictiveness and also prescriptive, it's very welcoming. I would say. I think the sector would embrace this, and I feel like you're the person that's taking. We need a thumbnail, right? So I'm thinking, hey, the man that takes the insurance 40 years, moves it 4 decades ahead of time, because that's what's happening right now. I could say that from a 70-year-old cold caller, have cold called your way into a position that you're changing an industry, or at least are starting a shockwave within an industry. How does that feel, bro? How does that feel?
I'm enjoying it. See, I think I am that aspirational generation. And I would be really flattered and happy if this is all I needed or this is all I wanted. But my ask of myself is much bigger, much deeper, much wider. So I'm not going to slow down. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to pat myself on the back and say, Raution, you did a good job. No, because I have miles to go right now. And might be there will be a day when I will rest and then I will say all these things to myself.
All right. Well, people, Raution Jaiswal, a man on a mission. That's how I would describe you right now. Raution, thank you very much for joining me on my podcast and for sharing the wealth of knowledge you've shared today. It's been a pleasure. Obviously, Raution Jaiswal in InsuredMine.com. Is there anything you want to shout out yourself or want to wrap up?
No, thanks. Thanks for this opportunity. I think enjoyed sharing my story with you, and I'm happy and proud of the fact that you got me to a place where usually I don't go and don't talk about those things. But no, it's been a very enjoyable conversation, and looking forward to the post production.
Well, I got a tip from somebody. When you have a conversation, try to close your mind, imagine a person in front of you, and try to make it really feel like you're talking to them in real life. So that's how I did it. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much, Raution.
Thank you. Thank you.